Hello, everybody. It's me, Argent, and I'm joined today by my frequent guest, Terilien, and nice meme Friar. And they're here because they're going to be starting a podcast of highly educated internet autism, as it were. And I've been wanting to have them both on for a while, but it's always kind of hard to coordinate these things. So they're just going to come on and plug their podcast, and then we're going to talk about Tolkien and whatever other kind of stuff strikes our fancy. So, do you two want to maybe introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. Well, as Arjun said, I, Terilien, and am a longtime guest of Argent. I like to make videos about the Holy Roman Empire, although not as often as I should, and about castles. I used to have a Twitter, but I don't anymore because Twitter is a hellhole.
Which
And
account was that got banned?
that was Castlemania.
No,
That
but
was
what
Castle.
number? What number was that?
Oh, well, no. So my last account, Terilien, got banned, and my current account, I just deactivated it because Twitter just isn't the same ever since Trump was removed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, all I did was get into fights with random subversives. Yeah, but this here is nice mean Friar, a very, very good friend of mine. Should introduce
Hello.
himself.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't
Yeah.
you introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I have known Argent and Terilien for pretty long time now. Um, I have never come on before because, as Argent said, it's difficult to coordinate. And, well,
Time
I
zones and
am,
that sort of thing.
yeah, time zones. And there's also the fact that even though I am a spiritual NEET, I am actually in education now. So, yeah, it's kind of difficult to take some time out. I don't want to toot my own horn or sound like a bitch, but I generally get too tired to actually do these things. Yeah,
Yeah.
Terillian calls it the eternal fat fuck syndrome. So
Yeah. Despite being a fat ass, Meme Friar here is, with perhaps the exception of Classical Fias, probably the single smartest person in our group of friends. So,
aw,
very, very
thanks,
excited to
buddy.
have him on. Shut up,
Thank
faggot.
Yeah,
you.
I'm gonna
Fuck.
I'm gonna
Whoops.
say, yeah, please don't drop the F slur. Um, Not
Yeah.
that I care personally, but just YouTube does. Uh,
Yeah.
I will say, Mean Friar, unlike classical theist, I can generally understand you when you're talking about something. Classical
Oh,
theist is a bit over my head sometimes.
oh, I do not know whether to be flattered. But yeah, well, I shall take that as a compliment and thank you. Yeah. Um, I'm just glad at this point that my accent doesn't throw you off anymore.
It never
So,
did. Ye-
yeah, it was someone else,
in case
wasn't it?
you haven't guessed, Meme Friar here is an Aryan from the subcontinent of India.
Yeah, the magic number from West Bengal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say it because, yeah, I'm not gonna say it because I don't want my friend's channel to get removed. But yeah,
But yes,
just
he is an Aryan of Brahmin descent, from a long line of Hindus, although he himself converted to Catholicism.
and so I did, yes, and yeah, I was baptized and confirmed not too long ago. And I would probably not have been able to make that journey if not for the constant prayer and support and bullying. Let's not forget that of these and the other artists I have the honor of knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like when one of your friends called you unbaptized third world shit, who was going to go to hell if he didn't get baptized soon.
Yes, correct. Yes, yes, that happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Based and
So
red pilled. So you guys are starting a podcast of sorts.
yeah.
Yes, yes, we are.
It'll be called Isildur's Shack. Isildur being one of the kings of Arnor from Tolkien's Legendarium. The one who cut the ring from Sauron's finger.
Oh, is he not the king
And
of Gondor as well? Or
he was briefly co-king of Gondor with his brother Anarion when his father Elendil was still alive. But when his father Elendil died, he left the kingdom of Gondor to Meneldil, the son of Anarion, and then he went to the more prestigious seat of Arnor, where he became king of Arnor and high king of the Dunedain and the realms in exile.
although by the point of Lord of the Rings, isn't Arnor completely like destroyed and no one lives there?
Yeah, and his descendants are the Rangers of the North, which includes Aragorn, who is the heir to his line.
Yes.
And it's his shack because it's a funny juxtaposition: Isildur, the great and mighty, and his shack.
Are there any major population centers left in Arnor?
There's Bree and there's the Shire.
And
Yes.
that's it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. Well, I mean,
They're a scattered settlement.
Yeah, well, towards the end of the Third Age, Arnor had been without a major population center for like nearly 1,000 years, right? I mean,
more than 1,000 years.
Was
actually.
that mostly due to the efforts of the Witch King?
Yeah, it was due to the Witch King of Angmar, basically, and due to the infighting that he was able to foster between the successor states of Arnor, Arthedain, Rudar, and Cardolan.
Yes.
Arnor is not as developed as I would have liked, and it's always been a focal point of my fascination when it comes to Tolkien's Legendarium, and I like to come up with a lot of headcanon for it.
Yes, well, as you can see, Terilien here is extremely autistic, just like me. So
yeah, we're both diagnosed with autism, but it's a bit more obvious in Meme Friar's case, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Although your Indian accent, I find, kind of counters it somewhat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Indians have a very, very expressive cadence.
So it makes you not really whatever the autism thing is normally.
Restricted prosody.
Restricted prosody. Thank you. That was the term I was thinking of.
Yes. One of our goals, besides discussing all things historical and religious on the podcast, and is to reclaim Tolkien from a group of people that Meme Friar, or I'm just going to call him Friar for now, refers to as Tweed fags. Tweed, insert word that rhymes with maggot.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, guys. I wish I could use that word on here, but they come down really hard on it.
Yeah, so...
hey, you know what? You can just call them cigarettes.
Yeah, the Tweed cigarettes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The Tweed bundles of sticks.
Yes.
Which is a certain type of... Could we call them conservatives after a matter?
I mean, if you want to, buddy, I'm not stopping you. But I will definitely think less of you if you call them conservatives.
Well, considering the conservatives conserve nothing but liberal errors, I think it might be an appropriate appellation.
Yeah, true.
Are they mostly like normie conservatives? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, normie conservatives, but not quite normies. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you go.
Well, one of the things that you'll notice in normie conservatives and neocons, and you will have to admit that there's a significant overlap between the two, because as we know, one of the pre-2014-2015 conservative pipelines was libertarian, neocon, and then proper conservative, right?
Right.
So the normie conservative is situated using that using that pre 2014 and 15 um, gradation between the neoconservative and the libertarian. So one of the things that you'll notice about them is that the normicons they tend to have very bad aesthetics. It's like it's surprisingly bad, and they have almost zero sense of higher culture, and they usually are.
Don't they kind of associate things like museums or artwork or opera or classical music with like liberals as like an urban elite thing? Is that what you mean?
Yes, yes, that is one of the things that they do. Yes, there's this pre-cottagecore fantasy with them.
Mm-hmm.
If 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 you know what I mean.
What do you mean? Maybe just what does cottagecore mean?
Okay, so in this case, cottagecore would mean okay, how do I
If I can, are you guys talking about like the cringy libertarians who say that Lord of the Rings is a metaphor for like minarchism, or that
That
it's
is,
like,
there's definitely a lot of overlap there.
or like the libertarian? Because
there's yeah, there's a lot of overlap there.
Fritz, I don't
So
think they're gonna.
basic,
Sorry, just a second. Fritz, I don't think they're gonna badmouth the movies. I don't think that's gonna happen.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So whatever issues that Meme Friar and I have with the movies, our position on the movies is that it's very, very, very good that they were made when they were made,
Uh-huh.
because if they had not been made when they were made, they would have been made later, and they would have made Boromir black. So count your lucky stars that
No, they wouldn't
uh
have made Boromir. They would have made Arwen black and Galadriel black.
yes,
That
they would
triggers
have
me
done
just
something
joking
horrible
about
like
it.
that.
Just
Yeah,
joking
I
same
about it.
here. Like it's awful to think about, but that's what they would have done. So I am glad that they were made when they were made, and that they called attention to Lord of the Rings when they called attention to Lord of the Rings.
You know
Many,
what? I'm
mhm.
trying to I'm trying to think of of a Galadriel who is also the queen of Nubia, and my brain just shot sparks and shut down. Dude,
It's pretty
it's just
horrible.
yeah.
But to go back to Tweed conservatism or Tweed traditionalism, there
Yes.
is this tendency to, adopt the trappings of tradition, like
Hmm.
tweed jackets, attending the Latin Mass, calling yourself a monarchist,
Is that like
but still
crunchy conservatism?
very closely related, talking about organic and local communities and
Yes.
traditional dress and all sorts of things like that, and using that, to dress up your ideals and your goals. And, the picture you're painting is at least implicitly white. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to put it
Hmm.
that way. But you're
Hmm.
still fundamentally unwilling to take the kind of measures that would be necessary to create such a society, or to
Yeah.
broach the topics necessary to create such a society.
So
Um,
can I um pitch in for just a
mhm,
second?
mhm.
So every time a 18-year-old libertarian graduates from from reading Ludwig von Mises to Russell Kirk, a tweed bundle of sticks is born. I'll just I'll just put it that way.
Yes, there's a tendency among such people to think that, um, you know, racism was an invention of the Enlightenment, and true tradition is the way to be properly anti-racist and opposed to racism. That's how you fight racism. Meanwhile, they're painting a picture of a world which
Which is
really is
pretty much, yeah.
which is
Um,
pretty much implicitly white,
I
but
find
they can't admit
Chesterton
that.
was sometimes like that.
That is not true.
Oh,
that
really?
is
Okay.
People
actually
have
that is actually not true at
Okay,
all,
people
because
I
have
found it when I
appropriated
read
him.
his stuff.
People have
um
appropriated Chesterton. People
Okay.
have
I
appropriated.
have I have again, um I don't want to dox myself, but I have written a thesis on Chesterton. And believe you me, neither Chesterton nor really any of his contemporaries, neither uh, Belloc nor uh, Bernard Shaw, for that matter, even though Bernard Shaw was the furthest thing possible from a conservative, but to come back to GKC, he never, Chesterton never ever would ally himself with the Tweeds. Just
Hmm.
that is not what Chesterton is. And one of the things I've noticed about this particular subsection of people is that most of them are deeply ignorant of Chesterton's corpus. They just haven't read Chesterton beyond reading maybe a couple of his essays in 12 types or varied types or
To simplify, or just to give like a quick idea, I mean, Chesterton promoted the idea that certain subversive segments of the population from the Levant should be put into ghettos.
yes.
You know,
um yeah.
he was a firm defender of things like inquisitions and,
Do you mean
you know,
more
heretic.
like so he seems cringy in retrospect because the people who have adopted his mannerisms and promote
Hmm.
his works are cringy? Is that kind of what you're
Yes,
saying?
well see
yeah.
the the thing is, they do not promote his works at all. I mean, um I'm pretty sure, fairly sure that not a single one of the tweets I know, that I personally know, and I know about 20 to 30 of them, not one of them ever gone through the Everlasting Man,
Because that's the book
for
I read.
instance, which is arguably, you know what, I'm just going to come out and say it, it is the best single volume history of the world ever written by anyone.
Yeah,
And,
there's. Oh,
and
sorry, you go on.
there's this huge um, gap in their knowledge of Chesterton's work. Mostly, it's just they basically will print a picture of something like, poets have been mysteriously silent on the subject of cheese, or Catholicism is the only place where the pint, the pipe, and the cross can meet, and hang it their on their boards or something in their room, and that's it. They
Yeah.
basically, they're about as loyal to Chesterton, the the man as he actually was, as Rod Dreher is um, loyal to Saint Benedict.
How about the
Let's put it
cringy
that way.
like new atheist university nerds who like Tolkien for God knows what reason are faithful to Tolkien?
Yeah.
Yeah, or as faithful as random kids who own who own a Che shirt are to Che.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Che, the guy who executed certain cigarettes.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
With
so
Tolkien, there is
oh, sorry, go on.
Go on.
with Tolkien, you have a very, very strong theme among the fandoms that, you know, Rings is about rejecting power as such, and the ring just represents power and how power is inherently evil and corrupting.
Yeah.
And it's like literally the series is about a guy coming back to his throne, taking power and restoring peace, and Aragorn goes on to wage war against the Easterlings for countless years in an alliance with Rohan.
Yes.
There's no hint there that temporal power in and of itself is wrong. Certainly Tolkien had sympathies towards a more decentralized model
Uh-huh.
state, but that doesn't mean that he was, against temporal power, or that he was a libertarian sense that some believe. There
I'm gonna
is
say
a
this
really,
though.
really, really strong tendency to
I'm gonna say this though.
Hmm?
Um, Tolkien was an anarchist insofar as he did not like the government that happened to be in power for what they did. Um, that was basically the extent of Tolkien's anarchism, um, or of his libertarian tendencies. He would have had nothing against a legitimately constituted, God fearing, um, centralized state. He would not have had that because
he supported the nationalists in Spain.
exactly he supported the
To
nationalists in
say
Spain.
he supported the
If
nationalists in
I can say,
Spain.
I know it's an anachronistic term, but I've always kind of grouped him into like the paleocon kind of category. Is kind of
Yep. That
Probably
that's
accurate.
that's fairly accurate. Yeah. Um, I will say though that the paleocons, um they are applicable to they're applicable much more to North American political thinkers than they are to European
Mm.
ones. I mean,
And I mean, a lot of paleocons are strict constitutionalists, which is certainly not something that
I
would
meant
have
yeah,
more
appealed to
as
someone
kind
like
of
Tolkien.
a that like it fulfills
If
a
you were to map him
similar.
onto a label,
I mean, a similar
yeah,
societal ideological position. Um,
yes,
yeah.
as being like somewhere between like not completely out, like that they're not allowed to even talk in public, but pretty far outside of the mainstream and willing to take like I don't know, like just traditional positions on stuff like gender or something that most people
Oh
wouldn't
gosh,
bother.
I want to tell you guys a funny story about Tolkien and traditional ideas on gender.
Hmm.
If you look at his letters, he said some really, 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 really edgy stuff, like how, yeah, women are educable, but they have to be interested in the guy who's teaching them, and things
uh-huh,
like that. Or how
uh-huh.
he, um, at Oxford, he prevented a female Anglo-Saxonist from being appointed to a professorship, because he basically didn't want her around, and she was apparently very accomplished. Press X to doubt, but he didn't want her around, basically.
Perfect. Yeah.
And he played an instrumental role in blocking her promotion to a professorship. Which, funny enough, me talking about how that was based is what got my Twitter account banned in January of 2020, Terilien.
Yeah.
Because I invited the ire of a bunch of people. You know,
Sorry, I just have to address something. No, Peter Hitchens is not at Paleocon. Peter Hitchens is like really fucking cringe. Um,
Peter Hitchens is pure cringe. He has no good arguments. I mean, for Pete's sakes, Dan Savage out argued him in their debate. The guy is just someone who makes emotional appeals to the Britain, vague emotional appeals to the Britain of what,
the
like 40 years ago,
1960s. Yeah.
or
Kind of like
whatever.
Roger Stone. No, sorry, not Roger Stone. Roger Scruton.
Yeah, yeah. Just
Okay, so sorry. So getting
Yeah,
back to the central
Rogers.
topic. So the tweed
Yeah.
conservatives are people who are basically neocons, but they adopt a lot of the aesthetic trappings of more traditional thinkers as a way to try to make themselves look counterculture or cool. Would that be
They
a
are they are not even neoconservative in that they don't like war. They don't like combat because they don't really believe in any kind of just war, let alone war for any mercenary
They're
purposes.
they're people who like the aesthetics and trappings of tradition
And
and
that's it.
things like monarchy and stuff like that, but they don't have any idea what it would actually take to restore it. You'll have a lot of people like that talk about how we need to just retreat from the world and just, let's found their own organic communities in, the United States, and where everything will be just so tight knit and we'll eat lots of natural food and wear traditional clothing and things like that. And then, of course, you point out to them, yeah, so the FBI is going to go there, claim you're terrorists, and blow the whole thing up, and then they're going to flood it with black people. And of course, they have no good response to something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
it's the idea of a bunch of they're not willing to touch things like racial issues, or the fact that maintaining high trust local communities requires
Yeah.
extreme degrees of exclusion, far more, for example, than restricting immigration in a nationalist country. Um, One example you might see of this would be there's a certain type of conservative that really, really idealizes the Austrian Empire.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they'll take the fact that it was multi-ethnic, and they'll treat that as vindicating a kind of true cosmopolitanism and multiculturalism and anti-racism. But of
um
course, they're going to conveniently ignore the fact that, one, it was rife with tension. Two, separate regions had their own passports. Three, there were strong drives to Germanize it. And four, two of the Holy Roman Emperors actually ordered the extermination of all gypsies in their domains. These sorts of
Well,
societies,
and I mean, it did eventually collapse along ethnic lines.
yeah,
I
yep.
I live next door to one, so
Oh, one of those Habsburgs, as we call them, who thinks that the Habsburgs provide a model for like an anti-racist.
no. I
Hmm.
live next to a Romani gentleman.
Ah, yes. Well,
Yeah.
but yeah, two of the Holy Roman Emperors actually ordered the killing of all gypsies in their domains. Well, all adult gypsies in their domains. And one of these were Joseph the First and Charles the Sixth, and also at the Diet of Augsburg in 1542, it was said that it would not be considered murder if you were found to have killed a gypsy, because the assumption was that you did it in self-defense. Like, you look at these traditional pre-Enlightenment societies, and the idea that racism is a product of the Enlightenment and that true tradition is anti-racist is just utterly ridiculous. People were
People have no idea just how racist the Romans were, or the
Well,
Greeks,
no.
or 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 indeed my ancestors continue to be. The,
Would
the
any
cost.
political figure pre-French Revolution support the refugee crisis or support
no,
mass
in fact,
immigration from Africa?
no, in fact, Louis the 16th explicitly banned interracial marriage in pre-revolutionary France, and he was a relatively enlightened monarch. Um, which was then overturned by the French revolutionaries.
So I think so is the idea. I know we're getting off topic, but this is interesting stuff. So is the idea that racial distinction didn't exist prior to racial scientific racism of the Darwin era and the early 20th century, and
It's a
that
complete meme.
no, I mean, but is that the argument they're kind of putting forward?
Yeah, there are people who will put forward that kind of argument, and I think it's a kind of defensive posture
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of traditionalists adopt, where and not a lot, because a lot of tradcasts, including myself, who's fairly trad, um, are not like this. But there is a certain type of academic traditionalist who loves the Latin mass who's like this.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just really, 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 really lame. And they'll just take this defensive posture of trying to say, well, traditional society wasn't racist at all, and blah 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 blah. It was actually fairly egalitarian, and they'll really, 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 really try and frame it that way, as if to appease and make themselves more acceptable to their environment. And of course, they remove all teeth from their
Is
ideology.
that
And it's complete
slightly
nonsense.
true among the upper class, among nobility?
What do you mean?
That they tended to be more like cosmopolitan, or
Yeah,
like
although it
one
was
would,
within like.
because you would, like, it was common to marry like someone like all the people who married like German princesses from the Holy Roman Empire and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, there is a kind of cosmopolitanism that just comes from being an elite person. Although, like, on a
Yeah,
local
but
level in society, cities were often, cities had restrictive immigration policies with one another. And, citizenship would be pretty much confined to the original founding stock of that city. And if you were a newcomer, you would almost never become a citizen unless you brought some very, very important skill. Like you were the only
yeah,
glass blower in the city, wanted to start a glass making industry.
So basically,
that feel when no Numenorian glass blower
so
GF.
basically, they're kind of taking nostalgia for a time period that never existed and combining some aspects of that with modern liberalism and
Hmm.
creating this bizarre like chimera of an ideology.
Yeah, and they're
Um,
unwilling. They're
and
unwilling.
and
Go
guys,
on.
let's not forget that some of them are actually feds. Um, Adrian Vermeulen, for
Oh
instance.
yeah, Adrian Vermeulen on Twitter. Don't even get me started on that guy.
Yeah.
Absolute fed. I mean, he's literally written papers on how to de-radicalize
um, and and
extremists.
how to and how to infiltrate extremist institutions and
Yeah.
de-radicalize them.
Yeah,
It
then
was
all
it
of a
was
sudden in 2017, he converts to Catholicism and starts promoting the idea that we can establish an empire of a Catholic empire of Guadalupe by
Yeah.
importing as many Mesoamericans as possible.
There was that LARP guy who, during the Wars of Secession, wanted to restore the Incan Empire, or wanted to have an Incan emperor as the head of a pan South American empire.
That would be cool, though. So
Yeah,
Oh,
that's kind of based.
uh,
Not gonna lie.
if
yeah,
we are talking about nations being racist, do I'm gonna say this: most people have no idea just how insanely racist the North Koreans are, of all people. There's actually this pretty fantastic book on this topic called "The Cleanest Race" by B.R. Myers, um, and he provides a bunch of um, quotes from official North Korean publications that say, there shall be not one drop of impurity in our pool of Han blood."
Isn't there like, isn't Kim Jong Un like a quarter Japanese though?
possibly.
Possibly, we don't know. We don't
It's
know.
like his 23andMe results were a state secret.
Were they really, or is that the joke?
No,
Because that would be fun.
that's a joke. But
Yeah.
I'm saying that's basically what the case is. Sorry, but yeah, so these people have appropriated Tolkien. Um Sorry, so are these different from the like libertarians who have adopted Tolkien?
There's
Can
significant
I
overlap.
can I just say something,
Hmm.
since we were talking about the North Koreans now. So this was like back in 2006, right? Um, this was against a South Korean. Well, he was half American and half South Korean footballer, who was felicitated by Seoul, the South Korean government, that is in Seoul. and the DPRK, the North Korean party, they had this to say: monoethnicity is something that our nation and no other on earth can pride itself on. There is no suppressing the nation's shame and anger at the talk of a quote multi-ethnic, multiracial society unquote, which would dilute even the bloodline of our people. That came that came in 2006 from North Korea. Maybe, just maybe, the North Koreans are the real folkish people.
Are
I
the real
mean, I mean,
racists?
Argent has observed that North Korea is the only national socialist state on Earth right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, so so Tolkien's I know that like Tolkien, because one of the reasons I disliked Tolkien for a long time is because of like how cringe conservative ink has made him,
mm-hmm.
as like that the hobbits are like some sort of idealized thing we should
Ha!
aspire to, and um the ring represents any sort of temporal power and stuff like
Um.
that. um
Well.
yeah.
Um. I remember once hearing someone say that the ring represented the atomic bomb. Like, what the actual fuck was that?
Yeah. So when people say treat the Shire as an ideal society, I always laugh. There's some obvious stuff to get out of the way, but firstly, I have to question whether these people have read the first few chapters of the Lord of the Rings,
Yeah. Yeah.
which depict, yes, the Shire is a nice place to live, but the people there are also incredibly parochial, ignorant,
Petty.
petty. Um, you have kids from another family who are trying to steal all of Bilbo's stuff by digging holes into his house against the
Yes.
walls.
Yeah.
Um, you have, well, racism, funny enough. So these people can't really idealize that because they basically think that anyone outside of their local village is a weirdo and a freak.
Do they
Um,
dislike other hobbits who are out from other?
oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Like the hobbits from Buckland, where Mary is from. They think those are really queer folk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really queer folk be living in Buckland. Why would you cross the river and use boats? They think that they're complete weirdos. Um, Funny enough, as well, they're depicted as being. They're basically very, very self-absorbed and self-involved,
Mm-hmm.
and you really, really see all the consequences of that at the very, very end of the saga in the Scouring
Uh-huh.
of the Shire, where a few ruffians under a drastically diminished Saruman were able to take over the Shire and just boss everyone around, and they had none of the skills to actually fight them.
Yeah.
And
How much did they outnumber the men, the ruffians?
Oh, by so there may have been like what, like a couple of hundred ruffians
at most,
at
yes.
most.
And the
Yeah.
Shire was very, very densely populated.
It was very densely populated and roughly the size of England, I think.
No, it was about the size of the Midlands. It's about 50,000
Okay.
square kilometers.
Okay.
Um,
Uh, yeah. You said square kilometers. No, say it in miles.
it was about 200 miles by 250 miles,
Okay. Okay.
something
See?
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now. Wait, what was it? No, it wasn't exactly that. Let's see how big the Shire was. I can't believe I actually forgot exactly how big the Shire is in dimensions. It was about 150 miles by 120 miles, so
Hmm.
about 20,000 square miles.
Right.
Yeah, so about the size of the English Midlands. And a few ruffians were basically able to cow them, and yet when the hobbits come back with the skills that they gained from the outside world and from their adventure, they're able to completely turn the tide and overthrow Saruman and the ruffian.
See, maybe I'm naive, but I never really I mean, rereading it, I didn't really read any particular political message into it. I just thought, oh, Tolkien was just kind of building like a world, and he was just like, oh, why don't we have this race of little people who kind of live in this isolated part of the world and are not really
And
involved in
they're
everything else.
Yeah, and they're like English Midlanders, warts and all, with all the good aspects and all the bad aspects.
So I just kind of personally didn't think there was a particular political agenda. It was just they were just a race he thought was interesting and decided to make them.
Yeah, I mean, the
Yeah,
Shire is not
didn't
presented as ideal. It's actually presented very, very realistically.
yeah, it is. Uh, don't they say as much in the beginning of the movies? Let me get that out.
But no, for example, we should also remind people that they were entirely dependent on the Dunedain for their own protection.
Yes,
Kind of
this
like
is
how
this
you
is
have
very important.
pacifists like the Amish or the Haredi Jews in Israel who, breed like rabbits and just sort of mind their own business and don't get involved in affairs of state while everyone around them is bleeding for their freedom and ability to survive. It's a very almost parasitic existence. There's something good there. There's something good about Hobbit innocence, but it is presented as kind of a double-edged sword.
But like I said, I didn't read any particular political message into it.
Okay, so can I
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can I just
Yes.
read out Bilbo's voiceover from the this is from the Fellowship of the Ring, scene 2, when Bilbo is introducing his race. Bilbo says, hobbits have been living and farming in the four fardings of the Shire for many hundreds of years, quite content to ignore and be ignored by the world of the big folk. Middle Earth being, after all, full of strange creatures beyond count. Hobbits, hobbits must seem of little importance, being neither renowned as great warriors nor counted amongst the very wise. In fact, it has been remarked by some that the hobbit's only real passion is for food, a rather unfair observation, as we have also developed a keen interest in the brewing of ales and the smoking of pipeweed. But where our hearts truly lie is in peace and quiet and good tilled earth. For all hobbits share a love of all things that grow. And yes, no doubt to others our ways seem quaint. But today of all days it is brought home to me that it is no bad thing to celebrate a simple life. Now, yeah, um, during the voiceover, one of the very memorable scenes is a hobbit picking his nose with like with the entirety of his little finger up his nose, and I just find that hilarious because the hobbits are by and large
There's
super parochial.
Yeah,
And
they're very like, quaint, parochial, low class, and that's okay.
yeah,
But
that's
it's entirely reliant on a warrior nobility to keep it going. And of
yes.
course, a lot of these
um,
people, they think that they can just retreat from the world in America when really, well, we know what happened at Waco, and we know what happened at Ruby Ridge when people decided to retreat from the world and do their own thing. And we know that similar proposals like Rod Dreher's and the Benedict option are also doomed to fail. Look at this nice white community of people keeping to themselves. It would really, really be a shame if someone broke it up, killed a bunch of them, and then flooded the community with black people, like the Obama administration did to a bunch of Minnesotan towns, flooding them with Somali refugees. A lot of these people are attracted to a picture that is implicitly white, but they're not really willing to admit to themselves that it is implicitly white and that it
ah,
requires,
so so
violence to defend it.
so one of my friends who is following this, just let me know that the hobbit in question had his little finger a couple of inches, not in his nose, but in his ear. So, so that's that. Apologies for the mistake, and a big thank you to my friend.
Sorry for rambling.
Oh no,
Um,
that's fine.
yeah, like maybe just to talk. To me, Lord of the Rings, it's a bit like if you forgive the reference, like Star Wars. I don't think is really about politics almost at all. Um, I
Hmm.
think it's about good versus evil, and because there's like good monarchies and bad monarchies, there's good republics and bad republics. Um, it's I think more a kind of a good versus evil thing, and I feel like Lord of the Rings is also more like that, as it's about good versus evil rather than
Hmm.
any particular. Like if anything, I'd
Yeah.
say the ring would represent taking shortcuts, if that makes sense. Uh,
It's something vague and very broadly applicable. It is a power that is evil and corrupt.
Yeah, it's okay. So a radical take, right? What the ring represents is techne and not logos. The ring is the real anti-logos.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's really nothing worse than E. Michael Jones's takes on Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
his takes on
Um,
anything fictional.
Yeah, like how he
well,
says
I mean,
that
some of it's
some of his takes are good, but like for example, his interpretation of the Hobbit is that the dwarves are Jews and Galadriel is a Zionist,
yeah, he really did say that.
even though Galadriel doesn't show up in the
I
books.
I am not proud of the fact that I spent money to buy that book.
Yeah, same here. I spent money to buy it as well, and oof.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm dumb. I never really got the dwarves or Jews thing.
There
Oh,
is a
so so
connection.
There is. I
so
thought it was kind of superficial.
Give
uh
me a couple seconds.
Okay.
Meme Friar can just regale you with his knowledge.
okay, so apparently the language of the dwarves is modeled after Hebrew, but I'm not a linguist, so I would not be able to comment on the veracity of that claim. For E. Michael Jones in particular, the fact um, that the dwarves were sorry about that that the dwarves were on a quest to reclaim their homeland essentially meant that they were um, basically returning diasporic Jews to found the state of Israel because that is what he takes Thorin's quest to retake Erebor to mean. And now, if that's not if that's not pants on head retarded, I don't know what it is. I don't know what is. It's just unbelievably dumb,
Is Aragorn's desire
unbelievably
to
stupid.
restore Arnor Zionism then? Or is that an unfair comparison? I think that's a fair comparison.
I'm back.
Terilien. Okay, so Meme Fire was just saying how Tolkien said that the dwarves' desire to restore. Which kingdom was it again that they wanted to rebuild?
Erebor,
Yeah,
Erebor was a form of Zionism. Um,
yeah,
according to some people.
Now, by that logic, wouldn't Aragorn's desire to restore Arnor be a form of Zionism?
yes. Everyone's a
Yeah,
Jew. Everyone's a
everyone's.
Jew,
Guess what?
especially the Numenorians.
Judaism is when you want to restore a homeland, and the more homelandy the homeland is, and the more restory the restoration is, the more Jewish it is.
Yeah.
Um, the only real point of contact between Jews and dwarves is their language,
Uh-huh.
Huzdul. So Huzdul, or Kuzdul as it's spelled, has a tricontinental system like all Semitic languages,
Mm-hmm.
and they keep their language secret. and they actually speak primarily in the native language of the local people, although they add a lot of their own words to it. And they just teach their language so that it doesn't mutate, and they use it as a common tongue between themselves, and they don't share it with any outsiders.
Yeah.
That's similar to Jews. The kind of insular, very, very, very tight-knit society. But there isn't really much in common. Oh, and the fact that they don't really farm and they engage in craftsmanship and stuff like that. But they're also very loyal, very honest people, which already makes them.
Well, they're extremely honorable. They always keep their words.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, of course,
Well, sometimes.
Tolkien wasn't an anti-Semite. That's true. But the idea that because the dwarves aren't the bad guys, that means that the story is fundamentally incoherent because the Jews are the bad guys of history. Come on, E. Michael Jones, you're being a bit crazy.
Hey, we love Grandpa Jones, but we have to admit that but we have to admit
monomaniacal. He's monomaniacal.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
He's obsessed with this almost Manichaean.
If you lose your job at a Catholic college because you opposed abortion, if that happened to me, I would become a monomaniac as well. So
yeah.
But
yeah.
I mean, so if people in the chat have any particular, like if you're angry at us for jumping all over the place, and there's something you want us to go into a bit more detail on, be my guest. But yeah, so there's the whole thing that Tolkien said his story was an allegorical. But I mean, certain things are like the Valar are obviously archangels, Morgoth is obviously Satan, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but you can't identify them too closely.
Right.
I mean, Valar have a certain mutability to them that,
hey guys,
for example, angels don't in Catholic
guys,
mythology. Yeah.
And I'm directing this comment towards Terilien. Yes, it's not entirely proper. It wouldn't be entirely accurate to directly draw parallels between between Melkor and Lucifer. But fuck you if you try to stop me from calling Satan Melkor Morgoth. Fuck
yeah, you. Yeah. Meme Friar is a freaking Turbospurg, and he regularly refers to Satan as Melkor in our conversations, and I always tell him, fat idiot. But I love him anyway, and I don't actually. That's not actually what I'm thinking. It's just.
Fritz is saying the dwarves at their height were the most powerful civilization in Middle Earth.
That's. I don't think there's any direct evidence for that. They were certainly very, very powerful. But
it's Dwarven Cope. It's Dwarven Cope.
Yeah, that's Manlet Cope. That's Manlet Cope.
Yeah.
I don't know if Fritz is the Manlet. He doesn't sound like a Manlet. So I'm gonna assume it's not Manlet Cope in this case. He's probably just reading Manlet Cope from some dwarf apologist.
So do dwarves have the gift of men?
It's never specified.
Okay. It's never specified. So the again, I haven't engaged with this directly in maybe the last 4 or 5 years, but unless I mistake, fuck you. But unless I'm mistaken, the devout amongst the dwarves believe that Mahal, which is what they call their creator Aule, that they have a special waiting room in Mandos for dwarves. Yeah. So
basically, the idea is that there's a special place in the Undying Land for them, in the in the abode of the dead in the Undying Lands for them.
Yeah.
That is set aside for them by the Smith. But it's never really specified. But I mean, I believe the dwarves. Some elves say that, nah, man, they just go back to the stone of which they were made when they die. But We all know that
yeah.
that's
I
just
mean, they clearly have rational souls.
yes, they were deliberately given rational souls by the
Yes.
creator Eru Iluvatar.
Which is I call um yeah, I sometimes say Jesus Christ Eruion, and I'm not very proud of it, but yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Jesus Christ Eru Eon means Jesus Christ, son of Eru. Because Meme Friar is a gigantic Lord of the Rings nerd. But I mean, so am I. I'm just less autistic about it.
Yeah.
He's also a massive Galadriel orbiter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a theory that if Galadriel had taken the ring and mastered it, she would have basically turned all of Middle Earth into her wheat field LARP,
Into
and
her
everyone
Sims.
Oh,
and everyone would be her simps. I mean, that's basically what she says. All shall love me in despair. Isn't that what every Twitch streamer says?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's true. I mean, all the simps are giving them money, but they're despairing of ever having her as a GF.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much to say, but I think that just the fact that the Shire is dependent on its protection it's dependent on a bunch of Hyperborean Atlantean super chads who are on average 6'4" and all have blue eyes is a pretty good indication that the
Yeah.
Shire is not this ideal society.
Yeah.
It's also funny if you read like the Silmarillion and, for example, the Rings of Power in the Third Age at the end of the Silmarillion. It talks about the dwindling of the Numenorian race and how they started to die out or mix themselves into non-existence, and how
Uh-huh.
that was like a bad thing. He
Yeah.
wasn't an autist about race. He wasn't like a Nazi or anything like that, but he was cognizant of the importance of bloodlines.
Which is to say that he would have joined Uncle Ted in rural Idaho if given the opportunity.
It was rural Montana, but yes.
Yeah.
Maybe,
I
probably
I
not.
think he would have been. When did Tolkien die?
70s.
Uh-huh. I think he would have been okay with what England's become.
Yeah, totally. He would have been okay with them. No, well, funny enough, in the last decades of his life, he was subscribed to like a British white nationalist newsletter.
Well, are you
Like
saying that are you saying that Tolkien would have been okay with it?
he wouldn't have. He
Oh,
was being
good. Yeah.
sarcastic. He was being
Oh,
sarcastic.
oh, 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 oh. I'm
Awesome.
sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm retarded. I don't really get sarcasm very well.
Yeah, well,
um,
you're autistic.
what was I thinking
Yeah.
of? I feel, just to jump around, I think that the number one takeaway I got when I was reading Lord of the Rings is that Eru is a massive troll. Uh, Because, like, every time Saruman almost succeeds, like, something just kind of happens. Like, the Ents save Merry and Pippin, or, um, Sauron gets his, I don't know what happens in the books, but he gets his hand, uh, cut off, or
Yeah.
like, every time he's about to win, it seems like something
Well, the
happens.
story is fundamentally about providence and
Hmm.
faith,
Yeah.
and it's about how you should fight no matter what, even when things seem hopeless,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's the right thing to do, which again is pretty contrary to the idea of a lot of tweed trads who, balk at any kind of fighting or violence. Um,
Yeah.
you should fight no matter what because it's the right thing to do. But how God elevates this kind of courage through providence into something more than just, a vain desire for glory or battle. He elevates it to He elevates this hopeless situation to victory. So it's, him
And
taking the more.
and again, allow me to interject.
Yes.
Nothing really um, explains what um, Tolkien means by this particular mindset better than the um, Athrabith, which is in volume 10 of the History of Middle Earth. The Athrabith Finrod Andreth. So it's the discussion. It's almost a platonic dialogue um, between the wise woman An- Andreth and the elf lord of Nargothrond, right?
Nargothrond,
Yeah.
Finrod
Um,
Felagund.
yes, Finrod, Hewer of Caves. It's available in its entirety for free on the internet, and I will ask Argent to post a link to it in the
Could you send me a link? Or
yeah,
did
okay.
you? Yeah, send me one. Oh, by the
Yeah,
way, okay, so everybody, here's a link to their podcast. I will also put that in the description of this video, anchor.fm/Isiliador
yeah,
Shack.
Yeah, we're gonna do our first recording this on Saturday, and it'll
yeah,
be uploaded.
yeah.
I also have a link to Terelien's channel. He does great videos on the Holy Roman Empire. If you want him to see more, you can always harass him in the comments section. Uh,
Harass me hard enough. Harass me hard enough, and I'll eventually make some.
um,
One of my friends asked a question. I'm gonna ask my friend to repeat it to me, and I can say it here
Yeah.
because
Give me one moment. I'm gonna drink some orange juice. I'll be right back.
okay.
I just posted the link to the Athrabith.
Okay. And okay, there we go. I know we're kind of jumping over this. I think one of the funniest parts of Lord of the Rings is how the Master Race are like dark-haired, blue-eyed Atlantids, whereas
Yeah.
like the Nords are like the B-tier Master Race.
Yeah.
Yes. Uh,
What's funny is that the founding stock of Numenor were mostly blonde, but they seem to have become dark-haired over time.
Really interesting.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Weren't the folk of Beor um
So most
essentially
most of the founding stock were the folk of Hador, who were mostly blonde, and then it
yeah,
was a lot of the folk of Bayor, and then some of the folk of Halef.
yeah. Uh, there were also the people of Khanburi Khan.
Mm-hmm. Who
Were
were distantly related to the Halidin.
So,
and
do
were funnily enough akin to the Dunlendings that the Rohirrim would fight all the way
Mm-hmm.
later in the
do
Third Age.
hobbits have the gift of men?
Yeah,
Yes.
hobbits are
Yeah.
men.
They're
Hobbits are
just
Hobbits
men. They're
are
just
weirdos.
manlets. They're
Okay.
just manlets.
Is
they
there
yeah they are they're basically um Indians on an Ethiopian diet. I'm sorry, but I had to say this, but yeah.
They're stunted manlets.
Yeah.
so okay, so hobbits is there ever an explanation given for their origin, or is it just kind of
Nope.
mysterious?
It's just kind of mysterious.
Right.
What I'm guessing is that during the Dark Years, manlets who could hide in little holes just had an easier time surviving in those
Yeah.
regions
Or had a lower
under
It was
caloric.
Sauron's dominion. Yeah,
it,
so
it,
they
it
just
was
did a very good job of surviving during the era of Sauron's dominion of the hinterland.
Hmm.
yeah, it was basically just okay, I think I'm getting okay, my friend asked a question. Let me see. Okay. Um so my friend asks if Lord of the Rings is alt history, who are the Maiar? I don't, I don't, I
I
don't get
mean,
it.
well, basically, he's asking, who do the Maiar correspond to? Obviously, they do correspond to angels. I'm just saying that their traits do not map neatly onto, say, a Thomistic conception of angels or onto Catholic angelology because they're more mutable in their character and in their
I was
Yes,
thinking more
yeah,
in terms of like a popular portrayal of angels and like.
yeah, they are very, very, very close to it. But Tolkien gave his own spin on it. Tolkien was no doubt familiar with, you know, metaphysics and stuff like that. You can tell just by reading him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, oh, I mean, look, not that it means all that much anymore, but Tolkien did read at Oxford, so I mean,
Well, I mean,
it meant something back. It meant something back in the day. It means jack shit now. Trust me, but yeah,
yeah, it really does mean jack shit now. Um, I mean, it used to be that to even get into a place like Oxford, you already had to know Greek and Latin.
yeah,
And now most people who graduate from those places don't know any of it. And I used to think, well, it's not that important to know those things, but it kind of is. You're cutting yourself off from the foundations of Western civilized. Like, to have so many of our academics cut off from those roots is horrible.
yeah,
It's unthinkable, really.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they used to teach Latin and Greek in middle school and high school, and now they teach remedial English in college.
For
We
okay,
have
so
advanced a bit in science and math, though, obviously.
to backtrack just a bit, regarding fighting on in a hopeless situation. Um, is it probably Gandalf or Aragorn who said that despair is for those who see the end beyond all, uh yeah, those who see the end beyond all doubt. Um and in uh the alphabet, there's a distinction made between Amdir and Istil. I- Amdir is directly translated as looking up. So it's the expectation of things based on what you know. So it's, yeah, so it's part expectation, part prediction on how things will turn out. However, it still is it very closely parallels the theological virtue of hope. So yeah,
Yeah.
so there's
Before
that.
before I forget, I just wanted to say that Sauron, despite getting his ass kicked in single combat, is kind of a Chad. Um,
Yeah, he is.
anyone who is worshipped as a god king is kind of a Chad by default. Um,
Yes.
so
Hmm.
it's the
People were very
implication
afraid of him.
that he uplifted a lot of primitive peoples. Um,
Yeah, he taught, like, a lot of the people in the east and the south were uplifted by him, and then other people in the west were uplifted by the Numenorians, but in different
Um,
ways.
yeah, and let's not forget that during the a third blooming of the Noldor in the second age, um, Sauron came to them as Annatar, the Lord of Gifts, and he taught them a lot of things. I mean, the rings of power were made using Sauron's own lore,
Yeah, which is
which,
why they were able to be brought under the dominion of the One.
yeah, which, funnily enough, though, if you if you if you read the essay that follows um that alphabet thing uh, I asked Arjun to link to. There's this essay in the same volume that follows that called Notes on Motives in the Silmarillion, and
That's a very, very, very important essay.
that's a very very important
If
essay.
you want to
Um,
understand, if you really want to understand Tolkien, and you've read the Silmarillion and you've read Unfinished Tales, and then you've read the Lord of the Rings, you really want to read Morgoth's Ring, and especially notes on motives in the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
Which is a part of it.
Yes. I mean, you can see, right? You can see that Tolkien knew very well what he was talking about um, in this in this in this essay. So he knew what he was talking about.
There's a
So
lot of things that might seem like plot holes in Tolkien's work, but then when you read him, you realize he knew what he was doing. He was a very, very careful author.
yeah, no one beats Tolkien at world building. This is something that Terilien does not tire of repeating. No one beats Tolkien when it comes to
At
world
world
building.
building, no. At writing, he's definitely not the best prose stylist.
I don't think his character writing is particularly good.
Yeah, it's Tolkien is the best world builder. He is an above average prose stylist, and he is a passable, like his characters are good enough for
Mhm.
what he's trying to do.
Right.
Yeah.
But like there are some Tolkien fans who, will kind of counter signal, I guess, the literary establishment's low opinion of him and act like he's like without any faults as a writer. I I don't agree with
Well,
that, but
there's this thing in the literary establishment where they like have this dismissive term like genre fiction,
genre fiction. Yeah,
which is something I really hate because isn't that dismissing anything that's not like I don't know what their preferred literary style is, but anything that's not
their
that.
preferred literary style is about black trans women.
Yeah, anything that's not that as basically mass
Look,
produced garbage. Like, because when I hear genre fiction, it kind of draws to mind something like L. Ron Hubbard writing like 2000 generic books. Like, they'd probably consider, I'm sure they consider Dune to be genre fiction, despite it being like.
Oh yeah, literary types hate Dune, even though it's one of the greatest the greatest science fiction of all time.
Just in
look,
terms of like, I don't know if prose is the right term, but just like how creative.
The ideas, the influence, yeah.
Mhm.
okay, I'm gonna say this. I spent a lot of my undergrad years in the English faculty of one of the best liberal arts college in 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 India and pretty much in most of Asia really. And regarding the English faculty, I have this to say: English theorists, English scholars, right? Especially the more the ones who are interested in theory, they're maggots fattening themselves on the corpses of dead theories.
Yes.
That's what they are. That's all they are. That's all
So
they are.
what you'll find is that like Marxism is basically things like Marxism go and continue in a kind of perverse unlife in English faculties. Like just dead economic and political and aesthetic theories. They survive in English departments.
Kind
Yeah.
of like how semi-based stuff survives in history departments.
No.
Oh no, okay.
Kind of like how semi-based stuff lives on 4chan.
Oh okay.
Yeah, well, regarding um history departments, try as they might to deny the fact, but reality has a reactionary bias.
Well, that's
No,
kind
it
of what
has a
I meant.
liberal bias.
No, but I
Oh,
kind of
no one,
meant
oh,
like
no one has liberal.
I kind of meant like the whole thing where women are treated poorly in every point in history other than the part you specialize in. In that time
Yeah.
period, things weren't that bad, but in every other
Yeah,
time period, they were.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
It is really,
Um,
really funny when you see
I
that.
have, I have, I have heard scholars of Viking societies say that. I've heard scholars of um,
Mongols.
early
The
early
only
18th century.
the only
Mhm.
one you don't the only ones you don't hear that for are like ancient Greece and the Han Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah, the
I mean the
the
Han
Han
crushed women's
Chinese.
feet to satisfy their
They
sexual
had,
fetish.
yeah, they had a serious foot
Psychosexual
fetish thing
disorder.
go on. Yeah.
I don't know what is wrong with the Chinese, but like they were actually turned on by bound feet. Like it was considered a weird sexual fetish, and they thought, oh man, it makes them tighter down there, and it makes
Do
sex so much
do Easterlings bind the feet of their women?
better. Easterlings are more like Central Asians than like East Asians, so
Oh, okay.
probably
So
not.
they're like Happas.
Maybe they are
No, the
described as
Easterlings, the Varyags, and the people of Khand, they are steppe nomads who live the Bronze Age mindset.
gosh. Hello, I am here, Bronze Age pervert, here
The
to red
Rohan
pill you
Rohan kind
on
of
this.
reminds me of a cross between like Indo-Europeans and the Anglo Saxons. Like this
I
weird
would say
kind of
the
mix.
closest. I feel like the closest analog would probably be like the Ostrogoths,
Okay.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But yeah, like it is. People have said that it was. I'm gonna give Anglo-Saxons cavalry so that they can't get conquered by the Normans in my fictional world.
If he did
Yeah,
that, that would was that the actual reason?
Some people have speculated that that was.
Because
hey
that's
Terilien,
both
Yeah,
autistic and awesome.
hey
yeah.
Terilien, hey, Arjun, to quote someone we know and love. Ah man, it's just like me.
Yeah, that guy Tolkien was a spurg. He was great though.
He was a fellow traveler in your obsession with tall people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. He
Oh yeah.
definitely shared my
Oh yeah.
obsession with tall people.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that guy had entire races of like super tall people.
What was Gladriel 6'3" or
6'4".
6'4"?
She was 6'4".
Celeborn was the same height. Um, Elu Thingol was probably over 8 feet.
Yeah.
Um, we know that Elendil was 7'11". Aragorn was 6'6". Boromir was 6'4". Eomer was 6'6". He really, really liked his tall guys, but he was also fine with short people, unlike George R. R. Martin. I think he's just obsessed with tall people.
Yeah, because George R. R. Martin has manlet rage.
Yeah, I mean he's like 5'4" or 5'5", and he's very, very fat.
Mm-hmm.
1 second.
Speaking of so I went so as I was going to the as I was in the grocery shop today, I saw a guy who must have been like 6'5", and he was probably, again, I'm not exaggerating one bit, over 400 pounds in weight. And I looked at that guy and I thought, fuck, is this Mecha Bonald? Am I seeing Mecha Bonald in the flesh? Am I seeing Mecha Bonald in a literal mountain of flesh?
Sorry, who's
And
Mecha
then,
Bonald?
What's this about Mecha Bonald?
so I saw this guy who was like 6.5 feet tall and weighed probably 450 pounds. And I thought, oh man, that's probably Mecha Bonald.
Mecha Bonald is a really, really, really obnoxious left calf who used to be on Twitter.
Okay.
Honestly, you don't hear much about the left calves anymore because they've utterly discredited themselves.
What was it? Because they supported BLM, or
Yeah, now
did they
they're
support
trying
BLM?
a lot. Most of them, yeah, they all did, and a lot of them are like, "Oh man, Biden is actually like a really good Catholic." no one can take them seriously
Hasn't
anymore.
I've seen CT has been tweeting about that, I think.
Yeah, as usual. Classical Fiest always knows how to spit
How
fire
to?
and hard facts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Owning the libs with facts and logic.
Yeah,
Yes.
that guy's great.
He
He's
is
I
been our
love him.
friend.
he is
Yeah.
one of he is one of the sweetest, nicest people I've ever met, which makes his Twitter all the funnier.
It makes
Yeah.
it awesome, yeah.
Because of how like combative he gets on there. Uh, Someone asks who's bigger, Mecha Bonald or Cantbot?
Contbot. No one is fatter than Contbot.
How much does Cantbot
No one.
weigh?
He seems to be about 5'6" and 400 pounds.
What?
Yeah. If I had to guess, he would be about 350 pounds. And no more than about 5'6".
So he's like 180 pounds more than me and 6 inches shorter, or 5 inches
Yes.
shorter. Wow.
Yeah. He's very ugly and very fat, and no one likes him anymore. He used to be somewhat liked, but
He
kind of destroyed his.
basically.
He burned
Yeah.
all the bridges.
Yeah. He basically got touched by probably by Dasha, I think, or
Yeah, I think the Girls on the Red Scare podcast like touched him
Yeah.
on the knee and stuff like that, and then he got all excited and decided he was left wing.
So someone in the chat is saying, always thought the hobbits were English, elves, Welsh, dwarves, Scottish, and Rohan, France. I always
That's ridiculous, but
I
you're probably a very nice guy.
I always got like an Italian Byzantine vibe from Gondor. I mean, Tolkien pretty much admitted to that, didn't he? When he said, I'm returning from Gondor after he went to Italy." Also, just kind of the position they're in with constantly losing territory.
Gondor is a cross between the late Roman Empire and ancient Egypt.
Why ancient Egypt?
Their construction of
sure
gigantic. Their construction of gigantic monuments to the shape of their crown is very similar to the Bitchute.
In the movies, I found like they had a very Byzantine aesthetic. In terms of their architecture.
They went for actually their architecture is not so much Byzantine as early Romanesque with some Byzantine aspects.
Oh, I just meant there's a lot of like domes and rounded. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Byzantine architecture is a bit. For example, for the palace, on top of Minas Tirith, they used Modena Cathedral, which is Romanesque.
I hate the Byzantines.
The Byzantines were backstabbing cocksuckers.
Yeah, okay, we can talk about that. Sorry, I don't want to get too off topic. Someone says that Tolkien based Elvish on Finnish and Welsh.
He based Quenya on Finnish and Ancient Greek, and he based Sindarin on Quenya, but he made the phonology as Welsh as he could. So it's very, very interesting. It was part of the genius of Tolkien that he was able to derive like a Welsh phonology from a kind of Finno-Ancient Greek base. But yeah, Quenya is very, very similar to.
Someone described Elvish as sounding like a song when spoken, but when written looks like the alphabet threw up.
Tengwar is like the greatest alphabet I've ever seen. What are you talking about?
I think when it's written in English, they meant.
Oh, okay.
Using the Latin alphabet.
Yeah, it doesn't work with the Latin alphabet. Tengwar is a very, very good alphabet for writing because it's a featural alphabet. Sadly, the letters are very, very similar looking.
Yeah.
So I think that might impede reading.
Nice
It
meme, Friar.
it confuses a lot of smooth brains.
What do they call the alphabet that Indians use? For
Devanagari.
Hindi, Devanagari, and that's based on
Devanagari.
Sanskrit.
Well, Sanskrit's not an alphabet. Sanskrit's
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
sure. That's the alphabet. Yeah.
Is it an alphabet they use then, or?
they use technically it's not an alphabet. It's an abugida.
Uh huh.
So an alphabet is a system of writing that has separate symbols for every vowel, for all the vowel. Well, ideally all the vowels, but for vowel sounds and for consonantal sounds.
Mhm.
An abjad is something that only has symbols for consonants.
Mm-hmm.
And an abugida is something where every symbol for a consonant has a default vowel sound and can have little modifiers attached to it for different vowel sounds.
Is it based on Sanskrit at all, or?
Well, the Devanagari alphabet could be used for Sanskrit. It descends from whatever alphabet they use for Sanskrit.
Right. Is Hindi related to Sanskrit, or?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's descended from it. It's descended from its spoken version.
Is it kind of like to Sanskrit what Spanish is to Latin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The difference being that Sanskrit was deliberately devised from the spoken contemporary Sanskrit to be as perfect as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
So in practice, like that there are some pretty big differences.
With regards to signs, what proportion of signs are in that script versus Latin in India? I'm just kind of curious. Alphabet wise. Like, what do they tend to write signs in? Or does it depend a lot on where you are in the country?
Hey guys,
Mm-hmm.
sorry to get totally off topic, but I have one thing to say.
Yeah.
It seems the game has stopped for hedge funds.
Can you kick him? Can you ban him?
We don't have the ball pit here, unfortunately, so.
Yeah. The ball pit is a place on my private chat where I constantly put anyone who annoys me because I'm actually extremely irritable.
No, but nice
No,
before
you're
I was
not.
asking, in India, are signs normally written in Latin alphabet or whatever the other one's called?
Sign. So you mean road signs and so on?
Or business signs, or.
So the thing is, India does not have a national language,
Mm-hmm.
so it's usually up to um, the discretion of the city, this state, and the central government as to which signs to use.
Mm-hmm.
So in Delhi, for instance, these signs will be written in English, in Hindi, and in Urdu. So um,
And
people,
Urdu is basically just Hindi with lots of Arabic.
yeah, pretty much that. And it's the same in some of um, in some of the regions of Bengal where there's a large Muslim population. Um, some road signs and business signs will be written in Urdu, but the vast majority will be written either in Bengali or in English. And those that are, I mean, Bengal has a pretty large Islamic population, so most highway signs are written in English, followed by Bengali, followed by Urdu.
What do West. Is it called West Bengal in India?
Uh, yes.
What do you guys think of Bangladeshis?
Just
Well,
say it.
So
No, don't be polite about it.
okay, you know what? So the vast majority of people who originated on the western side of the India Bangladesh border, they have a great deal of animosity, linguistic, racial, um, and religious animosity towards the Bangladeshis. The Bangladeshis are basically seen by most middle class um, Bengalis as um,
Primitive and backwards.
that's just put. You are too polite for your own good. They're basically seen as goblins.
They look like goblins too.
It's always really funny when you get like non-Westerners on because there's so much more blood than like.
Well, the two most racist people on my TeamSpeak server are Indian.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that says something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh.
Hey,
Right.
what's Dasha's body count?
Dasha from the Red Scare.
Yeah.
So her body count is, by her own admission, so I'm not slandering her, is about 50, and the other girl, God, what's her name again? Anna Kacheyan.
Yeah.
Her body count is about 80.
They've had sex with 80 dudes.
Yes.
Fuck.
Yeah. Well,
And they're not even prostitutes, so they're not even getting paid for
I'm
it.
gonna
As
be
I've said,
honest. Even
uh-huh,
if they like repented and like
you wouldn't touch them.
yeah and became like Christian, I would yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Anna Kachian has 1,000 cocks there.
Yeah, I have a rule of thumb. I'll accept the body count of like 1 or 2 if they regret it and repented. I'm not going further than that.
For me, it depends whether or not they had sex with someone outside of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of more my rule of thumb. But sorry, we're gonna have to. So in Tolkien, is it true that no two female characters ever talk to each other in Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, I think so. No.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the
I
Bechdel
think that.
test, which is really gay. Well, no, you know what? It's good because it can tell you what you should look for. Um, let's see here. Yeah, I've heard that the Bechdel that Lord of the Rings does not pass the Bechdel test, and yeah, no two female characters ever do talk to each other.
I know it's short, but I do find the Faramir Eowyn uh, romance very wholesome and cute.
Yeah, I like how he completely like chads her.
I love
Yeah.
Faramir is probably my favorite character.
Faramir is extremely likable, and then in the movie they made him like bad
They
for some.
turned Faramir into a douchebag.
I mean, he becomes
Speaking of the movies, Jim Caviezel would have made a very good Aragorn.
yeah. But Jim Caviezel's the guy who played Jesus in Passion of the Christ for.
I think Viggo Mortensen did. I know he played it very different from book Aragorn, but I think he did a really good job.
I think so too. I think he did a very like. I mean, he did do a good job, but I do not imagine him as. I think teaching yourself to no longer picture. I don't picture any of the characters as their movie actors anymore.
Who do you think
I
is the
have.
Gimli seemed
Mhm.
fairly similar in the movie.
Gimli was well cast.
Yeah.
Although they make him kind of comic relief, but I understand why. It's kind of hard to make him a character in a movie. There wasn't really much space to make him much of a character.
I think it suits him really well, just because of the way dwarves are. Just because they're
Mhm.
like stubborn and irritable and stuff.
Is Anna Khachiyan, is she a vegan because she has those
Yeah, she is.
spots on her?
Yeah, she is. She's a vegan.
Okay, that would probably explain it. She has spots on her face that probably result from
Malnutrition.
not having sufficient. Yeah.
I wonder
Yeah.
if there are
Anyway,
actually people who try to feed their cats vegan diets, or if that's
there
just a
are.
meme.
No, no,
Oh,
it's real. Unfortunately, it's real.
oh.
It's it is just as horrific as it sounds.
And that's torture.
Yeah, that's one of the
Oh, by the
grossest
way,
things I've ever heard.
I made like $6 or $7 uh, by investing like $60 on the meme stop thing.
Anyway,
Which
so
meme stock?
he means the GameStop
GameStop.
thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, you mean
yeah.
that's funny. Anyway, so I think we've said our piece.
Yep. So, maybe I'll have you guys on again sometime soon. Maybe when you finally launch the podcast.
Yeah.
Saturday.
There's a lot of different things we could probably talk about. But no, I think we covered a lot of Tolkien stuff. I'm sure we'll get a bunch of stuff in the chat. I'm just sitting here. Rain's just curled up next to me. Um, she's a good
Hey,
girl.
can I say something to Rain that's both like talking to a pet and also product placement?
Okay, sure.
Hello, Kitty.
Oh my gosh, that was actually pretty clever. Anyway,
Ow.
so it was nice being on Argent.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for tolerating this.
Oh no, I love you guys. You guys are great. I'm happy to have you here.
No,
Oh,
no,
oh,
that's so nice of you. Thank you.
oh, that's
Okay.
very nice.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll talk
thank.
to you guys soon.
Well, I'll be off to bed in a bit.
Will the podcast be exclusively token focused? No, they'll be doing history stuff too. They're both really knowledgeable guys. Plus, there's probably just going to be a lot of autism. Lots and lots of random autism. So I guess before I go, maybe I'll just tell you a wholesome cat story. So I'm at my parents now, and I keep Rain in the basement because they have a cat who's 18 years old, and he really doesn't like playing with other people. So like if he's playing with, so Rain like wants to play with him, so she'll go up and bat his tail or something like that. But yeah, so we have to keep her in the basement. And it's funny because whenever I come down in the morning to get my cup of coffee and I say hi to my parents, as soon as I talk, she starts mewing really loudly for me to pay attention to her, which I just think is cute. She's a good girl. So, anyway,